Welcome to the Sound of Movement podcast. Today we are continuing our discussion about balanced training, what you need to know, what you need to do, and we're talking today about doing less of what you want and more of what you need. This is a really important thing to understand if you want to get good results.
Rock and roll tribe, welcome to the show. To my left, I've got the smartest guy in the room, Phil White, our resident physio. Across the table, I've got one of the sexiest men alive, my brother Rad Bormeister. And behind the mixer, I have the sexiest man alive, Richard Lellies. Together we are Unity Gym and the Unified Movement System. We turn driven people into athletes, and we're going to dive really deep into how we do that this week. Today we're really going to talk about how your psychology can play a huge role in the outcomes and the results that you get. And it's a really, really great topic. We're very excited. This is our passion project this week, talking about balance and holistic training systems. And so we could talk about this all day. So we've brought Phil in to try and keep us on the level, keep us going in the right direction, and to cut Rad and I short if we rant. But please excuse us. We are passionate about this topic, and there may be a few swear words like yesterday's show that come out. How is everyone today?
Pretty good. A little bit tired this morning, but I'm good.
Rad's always worked for like half a regular work day by the time we jump on these podcasts. So, but that will change soon. That will change soon.
Exciting times.
Look out. Now, before we get started, before we dig into this, I want to ask you guys, question of the day. And if you're on YouTube, you can comment in the comment section. If you are on the live stream, you can throw it in the comments there. What is your favorite training system, training method, training program? Are you a CrossFitter? Are you a runner? Are you a yogi? Are you a martial artist? Are you a UMS athlete, superhuman? What
to
are
simplify it even more, strength, flexibility, or cardio? What's
let's look at if you want to just go through and share your favorite fitness attribute, your favorite sort of skill attribute. That'd be amazing. We want to know.
Rank them 1 to 3.
Well, yeah, that's right. And big shout out to everyone who's catching us on the podcast. You can also comment, and we'd also love a 5-star review. We would also love to send some love to our guys on the UMS Movement Mastermind private Facebook group. It's not actually a private Facebook group, but you still have to apply to get in. Get yourself over there if you're watching on YouTube or listening on the podcast. We'd love to meet you and see you on one of these live streams one day. And if you are on the live stream, let us know in the comment section. So, let's get this party started. One of the, and I'm just going to share a little bit of a story about my personal experience starting strength training. I was heavily into boxing, amateur boxing, and my coach sort of suggested that I try to go up a weight division because I was quite tall and skinny at the time. And he said, pack on a bit of muscle, you'll be less prone to injury and things like that. And so I hit the gym. I did what most people do. I found my friend at school who had been hitting the gym for a couple of years already. He trained at the local PCYC that I was boxing in. They had a weights room. And so I just said to him, look, I'm going to come train with you a couple of days a week. And he said, awesome, because he was training alone. And yeah, we did what most guys do. We went to the gym, I think starting out 3 days a week, eventually 4. And we did chest, biceps and lat pull downs every day. And that was, the muscles that you want to sort of enlarge as a guy. You want big pecs. You want
mirror muscles.
Yeah, your mirror muscles. You want big buys and big shoulders. And what I didn't know really is that, or what I sort of experienced was that as I started initially, we've all had that initial gym experience. Most of us have that are watching this podcast or listening to the podcast. You're pretty nervous. You walk in and it's like, oh my God, there's big buff heads everywhere and there's steel smashing down on itself and there's chains moving and it's all pretty intimidating. I was a boxer and I boxed in a room next door to the weights room, so you'd think I was confident, but I wasn't at all because I was in a new space, a new environment, something I wasn't very good at. And so as I started to experience a little bit of growth in my chest, in my biceps, and I started to get used to the movements and more proficient in the movements, I felt more and more confident with those movements. And I went back and did them more and more, and I lifted heavier weights, and that's kind of what you're meant to do. And then that journey continued throughout. We eventually left that gym and migrated to a big box chain gym because it had better equipment, but we still did the same style of training. We still just trained our chest. Eventually we progressed from an assisted pec deck to a bench press, because the gym had more bench presses, and we started to do chin-ups instead of just lat pull-down. But over time, I just got better and better and better at doing those movements until it started to seriously affect my boxing. And what I didn't notice over time was that I had really affected my posture. I'd pretty much just trained exactly what Phil said, the muscles I could see in the mirror, and I had no idea that there was a need for balance in the structures in your body, similar to, there is a need for balance on the mast of a sailing ship. If you had rigging on one side only, the mast in the first storm would collapse,
Yeah, right. Sailing analogy, that's a new one for you.
You like
Usually
that?
it's I don't know, fast cars or something. But
So-
I like it.
Yeah, so I did a lot of damage to my body, and this is
and
something
when I explain the anatomy around the body and specifically with muscles and joint systems, it comes down to those reinforcing and balancing processes. So it's a reinforcing process is basically like training one part of the system, but you need to balance that out with a balancing process, which is basically training the other side. And if you just do reinforcing processes, although it sounds like it's a good thing, if you reinforce one thing too much, then it's if you're building a building and you only put lots of weight on one side of the building, it's going to collapse because you're just solidifying and reinforcing that. So it's all about that reinforcing and balancing process, and that's a classic example of you screwing that up.
And then if we zoom right out to an eagle's view and we look at the macro, Rad's got a similar story with his martial arts, and he, so I became a specialist on sort of a movement standpoint. I was good at pushing movements, but not very good at pulling movements, and not very good at I essentially stuffed up the stability of my joints. Now Rad can share his story because he was very, very into one discipline or style of exercise or training, and luckily martial arts is actually quite fluid, and it challenges you in many different ways, but it still is limited in certain areas.
I wouldn't say that. I would say Kung Fu is.
Kung Fu, okay.
I wouldn't say that martial arts is in general. I think Kung Fu, I still believe that Kung Fu is superior to other martial arts for general well-being because of the way that it takes your body through full range of motion. And when you look at a Kung Fu athlete, you do get good flexibility throughout the body because of the way that it, and also because you use weapons, it trains your joints differently and it creates a different body awareness, whereas other martial arts, a lot of them are very much just about the way that you stand, everything's in tight, so your joints really don't get a lot of range of motion in a lot of them, which is why a lot of martial artists talk about how stiff they are and how horrendous their flexibility is.
It's bizarre, isn't it? Because they do need to kick high and things like that, but not many of them achieve that.
Yeah, because when you think about when you do wushu, it's the forms that create that flexibility. Whereas other martial arts don't have those forms in them. They don't have the sequences of movements and that's what forms are. That's what when I was younger, and especially when you were younger, and when most people look at Kung Fu and they think, oh, that's stupid, you don't fight like that, but that's not what it's there for. It's there to take your body through full range of motion and to develop strength through the full range and to learn how to be balanced and strong through your whole range of motion. And that's why I'm grateful that I was drawn to wushu because of the beauty of it, but I didn't realize at the time what it was doing for me to be able to create that that mobility, really.
Yeah, Joe Gable's calling out here, Yanni, with a huge difference there, Kung Fu versus martial arts. Yanni, come on, man.
Joe Gable is our member here, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Hi, Joe. How are you?
But
I wasn't sure of your surname.
Yeah, but yes, I also suffered majorly in that my upper body never developed the strength that my lower body did, and my lower body became very strong. From Kung Fu, there's a lot of strength work involved in that transferred over to everything else I did.
And that horse dance that you made me do that time, my God.
Yeah, and look,
serious asymmetric strength.
and we, to give you an example, we still do portions of Rad's Kung Fu in our warm-ups. We do the test the water, which is a drill that you brought over from Kung Fu. And it's funny that you say that, because I never really took that into consideration when I was heavily into kickboxing and then boxing, and I did a tiny stint of Wing Chun when that became really trendy, and then just didn't like it and went back to boxing. But I never really took into consideration the concept of the forms that you were always doing. And it's funny because, I never really saw you stretch a lot, But when we came to starting to develop our program here, the difference between Rad's flexibility from a starting point, and he says that he was still an absolute beginner and a lot of developments happened since then, but when you compared him to Richard and I, he was on a different level, flexible. And that was developed basically through your Kung Fu. Yeah, that's exactly right. And that's why I do say, and yes, Joe, I got it wrong, Kung Fu, Rad was very lucky that that's the rabbit hole that he went down, because it's kind of like dance. It's like doing a bunch of different types of dancing style. You develop a very vast sort of variety of skills, whereas doing boxing, not so much, and there was a great UFC fight on the weekend. My goodness, it was a good fight where you saw a guy who'd been a really high-level boxer who's crossed over to UFC and has been practicing mixed martial arts for quite a while now, but he has a boxing background, versus a guy who has a martial arts and Kung Fu background. And holy crap, the martial artist won convincingly, and it was very interesting because he's in the last few years he's changed his training style. His trainer doesn't let him spar anymore at all, so he's done no sparring in preparation for this fight, and he fought a guy who it was considered one of the best, and fuck, it was one-sided. I've never seen anything like it. But yeah, sorry about the swearing. It was so impressive. I was like, oh my goodness, this dude is on another level. Yeah.
The idea of to frame what Yanni and my story is that it is natural for us to run more towards the thing that we like and that we enjoy doing, and that like you bust through a point with anything that you do that is a specialization, any kind of sport or martial arts or dance or anything like that, where you get to a point where you go beyond the absolute beginner point. And all of a sudden, when absolute beginners start, you're better than them. And that is a very intoxicating feeling. It is a really, it's a real achievement, when you go through that. And in my experience with martial arts, if you really apply yourself to the training, it happened at about that 6-month mark. There was that 6-month mark where when a beginner came in, you could really show them up and you could really make them look silly. And then you want more of that. Yeah. You just want more, because then you start looking at the people that are the senior students, and you get a taste of, oh man, that's actually achievable for me now. And you go down that rabbit hole and you get lost in it. And I got lost in it, and I was 13 years into my martial arts journey, and then a couple of years in the army, where I wasn't learning from my teacher, but I was still practicing, and then back out, decided to really go at it with my martial arts again, and I was right in that rabbit hole, and I got pulled out of it by Ido Portal. He was the first person that ever made me just really question, is this the right thing to do? And he didn't question whether it was the right thing to do. He just straight up said, this is the wrong thing to do. You are getting it wrong if you are putting all your eggs into this basket. And that was what really, and what, opened my eyes to that for me was, I'm the kind of person, I don't like being told something, I like being shown something. Words don't mean much to me if that's all you've got. If all you've got is the words, I respond to people that can actually do something that I want to be able to do. And that guy, man, he was on another level, and he just really inspired me to look at the idea of this generalist approach, and unfortunately when we all decided to adopt that and to move away from the specialist training, to move away from what we wanted to what we needed, we all realized just how badly we needed it, in our own different ways.
Well, this is the point where I want to really draw a line in the sand, because a lot of people will be saying, yeah, but I love soccer, I want to just get really good at soccer, and I love boxing, or I love martial arts, or I love powerlifting, I love CrossFit, but the reality is, if we scale it right back, and if we really are honest to ourselves and we have a deep look in the mirror, most of us train for health, longevity, and to look fucking hot with our clothes off. Most of us aren't training to be at an elite level in a sport. If you are, kudos to you. That's an entirely different conversation. And there are going to be a lot of people that do, but most of us do. We even participate in sport because we're, trying to be fit. Like, I didn't start playing soccer a few years ago because I wanted to represent Australia at the World Cup. I started playing soccer because I was like, geez, I like team sports and I don't want to play rugby league anymore because I was just getting injured, and I've given up boxing and I want to play a sport, and I want to be and it was because I want to be fit.
I would add, just quickly before you go, I would add to that the reason why most people train, the pursuit of mastery. I do think that is a big reason why people train. It's definitely why I do it.
Yeah.
I think it's why you do it. I'm not sure that everyone out there is quite as healthy.
No, not everybody,
but
I'm saying I do think that is I mean, we've got people in the movement
True.
mastermind that are asking us questions all the time, like Vinny, for example.
Yeah.
That it is the pursuit of mastery, and their chosen thing.
Yeah, there's a small
why
percentage
they
that would people that would. Yeah, I wouldn't say it's a lot of people. I think it's a small percentage of people. Most people, it's social, keeps them moving, keeps them active, and there's the health thing in the background. It's like, I want to be healthy. I want to be able to move. They're aware. As much as we neglect our health, we're aware of it, and we're aware of the concept of aging and things like that. And we know that exercise slows that whole process down. But most of us sort of get caught up in this emulating an athlete who's doing something very specific for their sport, which is entirely different to being healthy. Most athletes, you wouldn't put them in on the same thing as like optimal health. They're not training. They often sacrifice optimal health to pursue mastery in that chosen sport. They sacrifice their bodies through injuries and through excessive wear and tear and things like that. And that's all in the pursuit of, competing, competitiveness in that. And we get really caught up in that, and we go, okay, well, I want to go and do something that's going to make me healthy, so I'm going to emulate that athlete. And they forget that competing and training are two entirely different things, And if you're training to be healthy, then find a training mechanism or system that optimizes health. Don't try and emulate a professional athlete who's not in the game of optimizing health. They're in the game of performing at the highest level in a specialist degree, where they're specializing in something, in some cases even specializing in a specific role within that team or organization, and this is where I am starting to draw the line. I'm like, well, hold on a sec. We've been getting it wrong, because most bodybuilders train their clients to become bodybuilders. Most CrossFitters train their clients to become CrossFitters. CrossFit's a sport, man. It's not healthy. They sacrifice a lot to compete at that high level. And we sort of know that now. We got enough data points from it that most ex-CrossFitters are banged up like most professional football players are, And so... Sorry.
I think that's because that comes back to the motivation part of the health hierarchy, where I think what people aren't doing is asking themselves why they're doing it, because I certainly didn't. And I think that what happens is, like, it's a case of you don't know what you don't know. So there's all this, we know that we know this, but there's all this stuff out here that we don't know about. And so you decide, you see somebody, like in the examples that you gave, and this is, I can definitely relate to this. I don't know how, if you, maybe you can, Phil or Richard, but like something that caused you to start training for the first time ever, to start the thing, for me was that I saw somebody doing something that made me go, oh my God, I want to be able to do that. And then I said, okay, I'm going to start doing that. So for me, it was martial arts. When I was a kid, I saw movies of Jackie Chan and Bruce Lee, and I just wanted to be able to do it. I'd never seen anything that inspired me to do that more than martial arts. So I hunted to do martial arts, but then you don't, it's this whole thing of not knowing what you don't know. You don't realize what that's going to do to your body. And if somebody had said to you, oh, that's great that you really like that, but if you pursue that for this long, this is what's going to happen to your body. Whereas if you pursued that, but you also did this, this, and this, then this is what will happen to your body. And we may have made different decisions that way.
Yeah, and Dave Clark's comment here saying, I have a massive addiction to Taekwondo, and I wish I discovered programs like the UMS offer earlier, as I would easily avoid some of the injuries I made in the past.
It's absolutely spot on, and this is my point.
Well, I didn't finish my point. What I was saying, what I think is that when you go down that hole, that it's a really good thing to be motivated to start something. Like, that is critical and crucial, and it's important to harness that. It's important to recognize the power of that. But then at the same time, Yanni's example of the professional athlete and what they do to get there. So you've looked at somebody that's likely at the very top of their game, and you've benchmarked that for the reason why you want to do something. But I think for me, what happened to me with martial arts was I got to a point where I realized that the people that I was looking at, this was a really big penny drop for me. And it took me years to really accept this. I was looking at Jet Li and Jackie Chan and Bruce Lee and people that had started from a very, very young age and that had trained through that period of time in your life where your body adapts so well to what you do. And I'd missed that boat. And there was absolutely nothing that I could do that would ever get what in my 30s or late 20s, what those guys had got in their early teens. It was never going to happen. And it took me years to accept that. I went through, and you guys watched.
And you also compared yourself to Jackie Chan, who went to the Peking Opera School.
That's right, the guys
where they train in such a diverse manner. They become expert dancers, martial artists, singers.
Or comparing yourself to Jet Li, who was literally the best of the best in a country where everybody does wushu for sport at school.
Yeah.
And then Jet Li goes, wow, you're better than everybody else. Let's put you into the specialist program. And you guys were watching me train when I was trying to deal with this. When you used to see me train for 2 or 3 hours a day doing Kung Fu, I was dealing with this at that time. I was trying to say, no, I can do this. I can be the best. I can push myself. And I came to this really big realization that there was nothing that I was ever going to do in my life that would ever put me close to where those guys were. It was just something that was unobtainable. And that was a very, very hard thing to comprehend. But then when I got my head around it, and you come to this place of acceptance, a spiritually enlightened person would talk about, what you can experience through meditation and enlightenment. But I'd almost become enlightened to realize that that's okay. It's okay to accept that I'm never going to be that. And then when I went down the generalist approach and I realized how much that I could learn and adopt from learning calisthenics and learning weightlifting and learning really good flexibility training, and what that's turned me into now in my early 40s, I didn't think I'd ever be able to achieve what I've achieved now, because I was going down that rabbit hole of it's all about martial arts, and I think it's for me it was a really liberating experience. Actually, it was really.
I had the same or similar experience with boxing, going to the state level, and there was one year I think I told you I shared this story where I saw Tim Zhu, Costa Zhu's son, compete after me in a lower weight division, and I just had this realization over a period of those events where these people had been boxing since childhood. They have families their father was a boxer, and everything they do is supported. Like my parents did everything they could to discourage me from boxing. And the last thing that they would do was support me. Dad started to accept that was what was happening because it was helping me through my teenage years and stuff like that. But I didn't have the support network. I didn't have the mentorship that was needed to compete at a high level. And to be honest, I probably didn't even have the natural talent that you would notice in someone like Anthony Joshua, who made it to the Olympics and won the Olympics as an amateur, and now is one of the world champ heavyweight boxers. These guys, they have the support system. They have everything sort of fall in place. It's like the Malcolm Gladwell outliers theory. It's not just about natural talent. There's a lot that goes into it, and I didn't have any of that. I was sort of challenging the status quo in our family, and I just went, man, I'm just never going to get to the level that I think I'd like to get to, and I recalibrated and had a look at what else I could do.
I feel like that pursuit of mastery is such a lonely and painful pursuit as well. Like it's so, like trying to go down that role. It's
100%.
so, and you get and just like you said, when you kind of open the door to learning new experiences, learning new movements, learning new skills, like there's just something so wonderful about being a beginner and getting those. Really embracing that mindset and just feeling like you're winning every day. It's massive. From me going from, excuse me. Yeah, I played Ultimate Frisbee for 11 years, played for 5 World Championships, was right up there, and then just kind of lost the love for it because it a mixture of getting my training wrong and injuring myself all the time, but it just became this sort of thing where it's like, oh man, am I getting worse or better at this? Like I've just been at this sort of like, state for so long where it's like you just get such diminishing returns in the amount of effort you put in.
Oh man.
And then it was going back and doing like a learn to swim program with my 65-year-old mum, and then just like learning a whole new skill, something that I was like actively terrible at, like, and had kind of taken on an identity that I was like a non-swimmer, hated it, and now that's just opened up this whole world of like, now I just want to try every sport and I want to be a beginner at every sport, because it's just I get so much joy out of that learning process. So it's like kind of going away from what I thought I wanted, and now I realize that that's just so kind of.
And I love the way that Ido puts this. He talks about there's zone 1 learning, zone 2 learning, and zone 3 learning. And zone 1 learning is when you're an absolute beginner and you cannot do the skill at all. So it's like picking up 3 balls and trying to juggle for the first time. Zone 2 learning is when you have learnt a skill but you haven't yet mastered it, and zone 3 is where you have mastered a skill and you're basically maintaining it or working on more perfection. And he talks about the idea of spending time in all 3 of them. So but most people try to stay away from zone 1 all the time, and the older we get, the more we stay away from it, because our ego comes in and we don't like to feel like that beginner. And we spend so much time at Unity Gym and on these podcasts trying to talk to people about the value of that, the value of just embracing that. And I went through what you went through as well, Phil. That was a big thing for me towards the end, where I was just going so hard, and I was doing this thing that I remember when I was in the earlier and mid years of my Kung Fu training, like I couldn't get enough of it, man. Like I was at my academy for 4 hours a day. There was a period of time in my life, I'm sure Yanni remembers it, where I used to wear my Kung Fu uniforms just as clothes, because I just did so much training. I couldn't be bothered getting in and out of my of gear that wouldn't support my training, and I just would do it everywhere. We'd be having parties and people would be over, and I'd start doing Kung, because I just loved it. I was just so enthralled by it, and that wasn't there anymore. It was like a chore now, and I used to say, I got to do this and I got to do that and I got to do that. And when I came out of that, and people say to me, "Oh, do you still do martial arts anymore?" And I say, "No, I don't." But do I still practice elements of it? Well, absolutely. And I'm actually better at parts of, like I can kick better now than when I did before, because I've developed a better level of flexibility and a better level of balance. And, I've still trained my body and kept those things there. And it's like you said, like I love what I do now, because as soon as I get bored of something, I just accept that there's something else that I can do that's going to reignite that passion for me. And there's no problem with that. You just go, okay, well, I'm just going to move to this thing. And it all falls under this umbrella of the UMS. It's all just about getting strong, flexible, and fit, and then expressing that through calisthenics and movement skill for me.
And that's what I'm trying to get across, and how we're going to finish the series on Thursday and Friday this week is, if I had my time again, that is certainly how I would have started out. Because I started out training in the gym, and I invested about 4 years of training in the gym, doing all the wrong things. And then I went back to boxing and tried to deploy what I developed into my boxing, and it had the most negative effect possible, because I had kind of created dysfunction in my shoulders and affected my posture in a negative way. And it plays into what Dave Clark said here. If I had access to a program that was really well balanced and holistic in nature, by design, developing strength, flexibility, and fitness all evenly, and I did that for 4 years and then went back to boxing, it would have been a different story. Maybe I would have felt better about going to state titles and getting knocked out in the first round, not knocked out physically, but getting eliminated from the competition in the first round. And it may have gone very differently, And then when I was training for a national event, I may have not torn my tricep swinging an air punch, and which effectively encouraged me to hang up the gloves and end my boxing altogether, And so that's what I would challenge people, draw a line in the sand between competition and training. And we strongly encourage people to have a way of competing, to find something that you love and that you're passionate about and that you enjoy, and use that to express your skill attributes that you're developing. But separate training from that, and train in a manner that probably makes you feel really uncomfortable, that challenges you to do things that you're not good at already, that challenges you to become fit if you're super strong and a little bit overweight, that challenges you to become flexible if you're ridiculously powerful but stiff, and that also challenges you to become super strong if you're already very flexible. You know,
you hear that? Grace Clements, she's got the first comment here saying that she's a yoga lover and does at least an hour of yoga every day and has started the UMS Foundations, but a bit overloaded with everything else she does. Definitely first place comes flexibility, then strength, then cardio fitness in terms of how much she enjoys training each. So, you know, it's I guess that's probably a common sort of
that's absolutely
in our group who you know, the tribe who does the UMS, like cardio is often right down the bottom, but as you know,
I'm telling you now, I really mean this, and I want everyone to take this in, because I've been in and around the health and fitness industry now for about 20 years, and that includes my own training in gyms for a couple of years before I became a personal trainer. If you neglect any one of those three things, it's going to find you wanting at some point in your life. Yeah. If you neglect your cardiovascular health, you're going to experience ill health at some point in your life. If you neglect your body's flexibility and you become unsupple, you are going to fall over and hurt yourself at some point in your life. And if you neglect your strength, it's going to be catastrophic to your longevity. So I challenge you all to start prioritizing a training system that will develop all three of those. It may or may not be the UMS. I would argue that the UMS is one of the best, but I challenge you to go out and develop all three of those attributes, and then deploy that into whatever you do, whatever you want to do, you know, and see what happens. Watch what happens. It's quite amazing, you know.
Yeah. For Sean Egan here, he says, I'm with Rad. It's all about self-mastery. That's definitely not everyone's motivation, though. And he says there's definitely a dichotomy of wanting to be the best at something, and being of service to others. When you do go that rabbit hole, it can take everything else. But Sean, I'm definitely, like, when I was kind of saying that Rad's a bit of an alien with his pursuit of mastery, like, I've kind of been thinking about that, and like I'm exactly the same, but with very sports specific skills. So like
you are,
throwing a frisbee, like hitting a volleyball just right, like that really gets me going. And it's quite funny because I just don't have that same feeling with like with doing a calisthenics movement. I have I don't get that same excitement, but man, I'm so
after
obsessive.
knowing you for almost a decade and being close to you for almost a decade, I reckon that you are exactly the same as me, but just driven by different things.
Yeah,
but
you're
all about the pursuit of mastery, and you're for as long as I've known you, Phil. There's always something. Well, since you got out of frisbee, there's always something new. But when there is that new thing, you're all about it, man, and you won't shut up about it. It's all about the technique, and it's
just kind of interesting to see those slight differences in kind of what gets you going. But you just got to try and channel that and make it work for you.
I want to use you as an example because my closing thought on this whole thing is, and I think you did this brilliantly, is if anybody said, well, if anybody listened to this whole thing and said to me, well, what do you think I should do? I would say, be the best student that you can be. Become a master of being a student. And a lot of people don't get that. It took me a decade to learn what it means to be a good student. And being a good student means that when you choose your teacher, you do not question them. You do not question them until you get to a point where you've learnt enough that you can analyze it and question it. But you don't question everything that they tell you to do. In fact, they'll show you to do things that you don't agree with, that go against what you've learnt, and you do it anyway. And you do it anyway because you chose to learn from this person. And if you decide that you're going to go, oh no, I'm not going to do that, even though you told me to, you're not a good student. Yeah. And that's what I would say. Be a good student and see where that leads you to. And my biggest thing is now for me, I just want to be the best student that I can be. And I've got a coach that I work with, and he's told me several times in our communication that I'm one of his best students and that he loves working with me. And that's my goal, because that's where I know I'm going to make some gains, you know.
Yeah, look, Stephen Pellegrino's made a good point here. You know, he wants to learn from the best, and sometimes you have to be selective. Stephen. Yeah, that's right, absolutely. Roy Stern saying challenge accepted. Now, I would like to, leave on the final note. We've talked about the lonely journey of becoming a master in physical movement, but I would like to spare a thought for how lonely it must be for Richard being the sexiest man on the planet. Like that would leave you, that must be an incredibly lonely journey. One day maybe Richie can share that with us.
Should we just get him sitting over in that back corner with his shirt on? Just
I think we should.
Get the viewers up, get people off the podcast and onto the video.
Yeah. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for joining. We'll see you tomorrow where we're going to continue.
Tomorrow,
this
tomorrow
discussion.
we got physio
that's
Wednesday,
right, yeah.
and we got
Big one.
Nilesh.
Big
You're gonna meet Nilesh on the show tomorrow, and our
Double
new
physio
physio. You got double physio action, and we're talking about. We're going to share, a lot about recovery and how professional athletes recover. The secrets to a professional athlete's recovery program. This is a absolutely must-see show.
And just before we do go, Stephen Pellegrino has just come in with absolutely. I wasn't hot on foundations, but I did it anyway, and I'm better for it, which I think wraps up.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Rads and this whole topic really nicely.
Yeah,
So
look,
on you.
training guys, don't do what you want when you're training. Do what you need. Do what you need. We're going to talk about what that looks like on Thursday and Friday.
might
We're going
learn
to
to
go
love it.
deep. What's that?
You might learn to
You
love
might
it.
learn to love it. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. All right, guys. Take care. We'll see you tomorrow for a massive physio show. Health is about performance, not just body image.
You better be willing to accept what you're going to have to do to get there.
We'll start focusing on movement goals, strength goals, flexibility goals.
When you nail that skill, it's there forever.
The body image goal doesn't get you that
It's the
far.
consistency and frequency that's going to get you there. It's not the intensity.
There's no shortcuts to mastery and movement. Destination doesn't change overnight, but your direction will.
The gym is not the place to beat up the body that you hate. It's the place to build the body that you love.
We are the gym that teaches people how to move instead of just exercise, because we believe that health is about performance, not just body image.